busy folks are, and you may have just got the notice that this meeting is being recorded. We hope that this is really more of a conversation, and we're really, really privileged to have not only the filmmaker, but some of the stars, some of the folks who have put their blood, sweat, and tears into making Vertical Harvest a reality. And we have the largest employer of people with IDD in the state of Colorado, Mr. Lloyd Lewis with ARC Thrift. In terms of housekeeping, we want this panel to be interactive. It is being recorded. So if you know of folks who could really benefit from this conversation, we can get that to you. And as you came in, you may have noticed you were muted upon entry, and we'll unmute attendees as needed throughout the event. Should you have questions, I think one of the best ways to present those questions is to put that into the chat box. And we'll collect those questions and try to answer them in the order that we get them. Feel free to turn on or off your video as you're comfortable. And if you haven't had the opportunity to watch the film yet, I believe somebody is going to drop that into the chat. Simply cut and paste that or click it and have it on your browser. It's really inspiring. This film will continue streaming through Sunday, the 17th. So we have a few more days, and please share that with your networks. That is October 17th. So thank you all for being here. Now, I have the real privilege of just playing moderator. And what that means is that I will connect with some of our panelists who inspire me every day in so many different ways. We have Ryan Akers with the ARC of Weld County. We have Lloyd Lewis, as I mentioned, with ARC Thrift Stores. And we're really blessed to have Emily Churchill, the director of production for Vertical Harvest Farms, and Johnny, a senior farm associate with Vertical Farms. Thank you for being here. And last, but of course not least, is Jennifer Tanishan. She's a director and producer of this tremendous film, Hearts of Glass. Ryan, I should say I'm Cristiano Souza. I'm with the ARC of Colorado. We get to do public policy and advocacy on behalf of the 14 ARC chapters throughout the state, collectively with over 3,500 members, serving over 10,000 individuals in all areas around educational access, whether that be help with IEPs or 504s, housing, employment, waivers, benefits. We're here to help. We problem solve. And it is an absolute pleasure to partner with the ARC of Weld County, one of the member chapters throughout the state. So, Ryan, I am going to start with you, if that's okay. Ryan, as the community ambassador and office assistant at Weld County, that's one hat you wear. There's another hat that you wear. And do the goals and activities of Vertical Harvest remind you of your own business, Plants Alive, in any way?
Yes, the goals and activities of Vertical Harvest remind me of my own business because we all have a vision of helping people in our communities. I am an independent employer owning my own business, Plants Alive, which was established in 2011 as the owner of Plants Alive. I care for maintaining plants and gardens in people's homes for my church and for friends.
Wow, so there were probably aspects of this film that really just kind of stood out for you. What might those have been?
Well, like for my friends and my family and all my churches I do with their plants.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to be able to do that. Lloyd, this next question is for you. You are the largest employer of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the state of Colorado. As you watched the film, did you relate to any of the concerns or solutions used by the Vertical Harvest team as they work through building the business? And maybe you could introduce yourself really briefly as well.
Sure. So I'm Lloyd Lewis. I'm in my 16th year as CEO of the ARC Thrift Stores. And we fund all of the wonderful ARC chapters of Colorado. And it's just a pleasure to be here with my good friend Cristiano and my friends from the Arc of Weld. And I have to say, I'm so inspired by what Jen's done with this film, and inspired by Emily and Johnny and you, Ryan, for all the great work that you do. And it's just a real pleasure to be here. The film resonated with me to a very high degree. When I started with the thrift stores, we had 10 employees with intellectual disabilities, and there wasn't a culture at that time in 2005 that emphasized employing people with IDD. So I put in a program when I started as president late in 2005, and many of the things that Vertical Harvest ran into as challenges presented themselves. You know, training, coaching, supporting, making sure our culture understood who people with IDD were in the workplace, how they could contribute, the talents and skills that they brought to us, how to determine best fits and matches in jobs, how to make changes as needed when there was a desire to go a different direction in a particular job with a particular employee. All of the things that Vertical Harvest encountered, and it's it's always a work in progress. And for us, solutions were just more training with all of our employees, with more awareness and more education, and just more understanding and support as needed. And I'm proud to say that over my tenure, we've hired 350 wonderful employees with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And the contributions that they have made are immeasurable. We've had 15 record years at ARC, 15 record years. And I attribute half of that success to the talents and skills that people like Ryan and Johnny bring to their workplaces. And I just applaud Vertical Harvest and Jen and the ARCs for all the great work you do. And I have to say that I'm the father of a wonderful young man whose name is Kennedy, and he has Down syndrome. He just turned 18. And I'm excited to know that he will be working for us when he graduates from high school. And I think he's going to be a wonderful employee. I do have to say that he's targeting my job, which my staff is kind of a fan of, but he has pretty high ambitions. So I think everyone would like working for Kennedy. He tells the greatest knock-knock jokes that you've ever heard. But again, congratulations to everyone on this call. I just admire all of you.
Thank you, Lloyd. I'm going to shift for a little bit over to our friends in Wyoming. Emily, maybe you can introduce yourself, and then I'll just follow that up with a question. And then Johnny, we'll get to you right after that.
Yeah. Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Churchill. I'm the director of production at Vertical Harvest, which means that it's my job to make sure all the plants are growing, and also to make sure that all the people are trained to know if the plants are growing. And I have lived in Wyoming for 6 years. I've been with Vertical Harvest for pretty much all of that time. I started out as a volunteer and worked my way up to my position now, and kind of have found my dream job at Vertical Harvest, and I feel very lucky for that.
Yeah. I'm Johnny. I've been a Wyoming native since 1993. I've worked at Vertical Harvest since its opening. I'm kind of proud to be part of it.
Well, thank you. Emily, maybe as Lloyd was talking, you resonated with a little bit of some of his comments. And I'm just curious, Emily, what do you find most rewarding about your work? And, we all have those days that maybe are the least rewarding days, and why?
Yeah, I think the most rewarding thing for me has been seeing how the vision and the mission of the company have grown over the last 5 years. When we first started, we just had our one, we still currently only have our one Jackson greenhouse, but we now have plans for a lot more. And, in the early days, it was just a lot of figuring everything out. How do we run the greenhouse? Like Lloyd said, how do we put in good training programs? How do we coach people? How do we make sure everyone's supported? And it was very much focused on, let's just, we just got to figure out our day-to-day operations. And now we've really seen that we can do it. And now we really have a vision for having workplaces like this all over the country and employing so many more people with intellectual and physical disabilities. And I think that's what makes me really excited to come to work every day, is knowing that we've had such a successful impact here in Jackson, but we're gonna be able to do that in so many more places. And yeah, just kind of watching the company and all of our employees grow so much. Like, Johnny's grown so much since I've been there, and now you're leading teams and you're gonna train future people, and seeing you're so welcome. Just seeing the progression of every individual and of the company has been really rewarding.
Literally and figuratively in this case, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Johnny, you're such a rock star in the film. And, do you feel like you've faced barriers to employment?
Yeah.
If you have, maybe you could just talk to us about that.
Yeah. When I was working at Vertical Harvest, I didn't have very much options. I've had low pay. It's less than $10 per hour.
Johnny, do you mean your previous job that you had? Because you said Vertical Harvest, but maybe you meant a previous job.
Yeah. Yes, I meant the old country inn. That's what I meant to say.
Okay. So low pay, and I'm thinking, Johnny, that one of the things that attracted you to Vertical Harvest was better pay. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct, Cristiano. Thanks.
Okay. What about the people you work with? How would you talk about that?
Well, I went to school with some of them, and they get me.
Okay, so that's important, feeling like you belong somewhere,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yes, I do belong.
Okay, that's great. I think Lloyd can probably also speak to the fact that of all of his employees, that there's a real sense of belonging with each other and to the mission of the group, or the mission of what Arc Thrift is trying to do.
Yeah, for our hundreds of employees with intellectual and developmental disabilities, I believe their jobs have a central place in their lives. They take a lot of pride in their contributions. They take a lot of pride in the work that they do. And they have a community with our employees who don't have disabilities, and also with their other fellow employees who do have disabilities. And we've created some supplemental programs. So in addition to their employment, we have an educational program that we call ARC University. We do a series of 12 monthly post-secondary style classes, and we confer degrees at an annual graduation. We just did that about a week ago. We also have a social program that we call ARC Ambassadors. We may go to the movies or to the zoo or dinner. We have a community service program with the Civitans, International Civitans, where they're doing various projects like writing letters to seniors or delivering gifts of appreciation to law enforcement or just various things in the community. So we hear from our employees with IDD and their families how much their work means to them and how proud they are of their work. And it's a real community. It's a real community. And I think that's a very important thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Great. I want to be sure to introduce Jennifer, actually have Jennifer introduce herself, who is really the ingenue, the creative force behind this film that we all had a privilege to watch. And it's so nice to be able to watch something that is about inclusion, that is about competitive, integrated employment, that is about moving a movement forward. So Jennifer, maybe you can introduce yourself and, you know,
Really? And
tell us-
interrupt your
Yeah.
complimenting me? I have no desire to. Please go on. Stop. I mean, go. Yes. Thank you, Cristiano. I'm Jen Tennekin. I'm the director of Hearts of Glass, and I'm delighted to be here with you guys today. Again, if you haven't had a chance to watch the film, you still have time to watch it, but we'd love to take your questions too, because Cristiano, you know, he only gets paid to ask like 5 questions and then it's all over. I've been making documentary films for about 20 years. I moved to Jackson in 2002, and I've really focused on community storytelling. And I think I just lucked out in that I had finished another film just before, just as the greenhouse was being completed. And I knew the women behind the project. There were sort of 3 women who worked on this tirelessly for almost 8 years. One with a background in sustainability and food. The other, Nona, who's featured in the film, who's an architect and also has a brother with developmental disabilities. And then Caroline Croft Este, who's the human resource director in the film. And, you know, she has worked as a service provider, a Medicaid waiver provider for clients in Jackson. So she had, you know, a group of folks who wanted to work, were capable of work, but had a lot of difficulty finding work. So it was sort of the combination of those 3 women's interests that sort of brought Vertical Harvest to fruition. The story that Johnny tells so excellently in the phone call. And just as a digression, one thing I love about the business is that they really do, I think, focus on people's strengths and give people an opportunity to shine and use their abilities. So, you know, I mean, maybe it wouldn't happen in an insurance office or some other employment, but, you know, Johnny giving a tour of the greenhouse and doing the story with the phone call is terrific. And, you know, that just to me is really points out how you can use people's strengths and what people can bring, you know, unique and wonderful skills that people can bring to the workplace. I also think that, you know, Lloyd also reinforces, you know, this is a business case for inclusion. So I have to say, I didn't really think about that before I started working on the film. And then I think, you know, we also live in a community that's very tourism driven. We have high and low seasons. We have a lot of people who are just here to enjoy the outdoors, and work is sort of incidental. So having a really reliable, motivated year-round workforce is important. So, I think the business of Vertical Harvest met a lot of community needs: year-round food production, and providing meaningful, competitively paid and inclusive employment for community members in Jackson with various disabilities.
Yeah, it was great to see scene after scene in this film really holding up what it means to be an inclusive employer. I think there's a lot to be told, far more than the time allotted in this film. And so, Ryan, I wanted to ask you a question about inclusive employment. You're a communicator, you're an ambassador, you're the office assistant for the Arc of Weld County. What does an inclusive employment mean for you? What does that look like?
Well, inclusive and competitive employment is something that means a lot to me. Specifically, it means to be given the same opportunities, competitive pay, and to be treated the same as others who do not have a diagnosed disability. I have been working for the Arc of Weld County since 2014, and the opportunities I've been given while working here mean so much to me. I'm given the same opportunities and experience as everyone else on my team.
Now, that's kind of like if you looked at an encyclopedia and looked for the word inclusive and looked at that page, I think you would describe that. And there'd be the Arc Weld logo there. That's pretty awesome. Now, Lloyd, I want to jump in a little bit to the similarities between Arc Thrift and Vertical Harvest. What similarities did you notice about the Vertical Harvest management team? Of course, we have Emily and Johnny on the line here, and employees and teams at Arc Thrift.
I think it was the connection between their teams and their employees with disabilities, just the bonding, the friendships, the fun, the tackling hard jobs together, working through problems together. I was going to make a remark that, on this phone call, I think we see why Vertical Harvest works. We see why the Arc of Weld County works. If you look at the smiles that Johnny and Emily have, just like, look at that. They're just like amazing smiles. And if you look at Ryan's smile, but when you see people who work together and get each other and connect and bond like they do, that's what we experience at our company. We have very close relationships across teams with all of our employees with disabilities, and we really become a family, even though we're a large company. And the similarities, when I watched that film, it was like watching what happens at ARC, with people helping each other, supporting each other, understanding each other, trying to create success and fun and just a community. It resonated so strongly with our cultures are the same. They are the same. And maybe someday I can work for Vertical Harvest, although I'm not very good with flowers. But
we were just saying we should come visit you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need. Yeah, we're trying to recruit Johnny to ARC. Is that okay?
No, absolutely.
No, I'm already taken.
When you look at their
listen,
smiles,
if we had
that's
a red
why
carpet
Vertical
that
Harvest
stretched all the
works.
way to Jackson, we would roll it out for you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Just looking at those two right now and Ryan.
Okay, so
That's why the culture works.
okay, where's your business again? I'd like to visit some.
We have 31 stores, Ryan, so including one in Fort Collins, by the way. It's kind of close to you.
Cool.
Johnny.
Fort Collins.
No, we won't steal. We won't try to steal your employees.
I've been
Okay, but I think we could do a road trip at some point. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to come up and see Vertical Harvest. I love Vertical Harvest.
Yes, please do.
Great. Well, looks like a road trip's in our future too. Emily, this next question is for you. Boy, you all just kind of work on the fly just about every day. Different challenges are posed and you got to problem solve. How have your responsibilities changed since what was captured in the film? Really thinking about that first 15 months of operation.
Yeah, they've changed quite a lot, actually. Although I was always drawn to the plants. Like I always knew I wanted that to be part of my job because I have a biology background and I've always kind of been a plant nerd. But like I said, when I started, I was a volunteer in the microgreens department, which is Johnny's specialty, and kind of you've worked in every single department.
Yes, I did.
Microgreens has always been the majority of your time.
Yeah.
That's why you
I used to pick tomatoes every Monday and Thursday.
Yep. And so I started out in microgreens and then started managing the microgreens and the lettuce, and then managing the microgreens, the lettuce and the tomatoes. And then I added food safety onto that as well. And yeah, just kind of as I learned more and more about the different types of plants we were growing, I started overseeing more of the production, and then managing as I'm managing more plants, that also means I've been managing more people. Like I think when Jen was filming, part of that time I was a volunteer, and then part of that time I was working just in the microgreens department, which honestly feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, so you now have Tim's job, Tim, who was in the film and has moved on to another business. So
yeah. Exactly. And I'm currently right now also in a little bit of a transition from just working on our Jackson greenhouse to helping with replication and expansion. So I'm starting to work more and more with we kind of call it, just working more and more with our COO and our CEO on how do we want to plan for and how we're going to operate our future greenhouses. So that's really exciting for me. That's all still really new for me. That's kind of happened in the last 2 months but yeah, I would say there's been a lot has changed, but it's all been really I one of the things I love about my job is that I am constantly learning new things, and that is really valuable to me. So yeah, a lot has changed.
Yeah, well, change is good, especially in the nonprofit world. But you're also blending into the business world in that business perspective, and you have heart and you have mission and you have direct alignment to community impact. So there's so many bottom lines that I'm just so intrigued by. And I'm going to get to some questions from the floor in a minute, but Johnny, maybe you can talk to us about the most helpful feedback or advice you've ever received from a coworker.
I'm not so sure. Jen, a little help?
Absolutely, Johnny. I'm here for you to, let's see. Well, okay, I'm not, maybe not the best advice, but just as an observation, I have seen you grow in so many ways in the things that you can handle. We all like routine. Yeah. You like your routine. Yeah. I've seen something, working in a startup, there are a lot of times when routine gets thrown to the side, right? And I've been really impressed sort of watching you over time and how you have been able to be a little bit more flexible with things. I think it's always okay to say, I'm not completely happy with this, but then I've seen you kind of just move on and do what needs to be done. And I'm also, your friendship, your and Emily's friendship, to me sort of encapsulates all of the, really wonderful things about having an inclusive workplace, in that I think we forget, I work alone, so I have no friends, but
Oh boy.
yeah, oh boy.
No, all of us.
But I think we forget, how much social contact and positive social contact can come from our workplace. And, I think a lot of us take that for granted. And if you aren't, if you don't have work, that's a big portion of your life where you have opportunities to interact with people and positive experiences. And I know you guys have gone to trivia night together, and nobody's scheduling those things for you as you two employees should go do this after work. You choose to do it. So, to me, that's a really great thing.
Yeah. I just figured out most helpful advice from my dad. Find your passion.
Mm.
I knew if I talked long enough, you'd have an answer.
Yeah.
Who, on your hard days at work, who do you feel like provides you with support?
Let's see. My mom, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Is there anyone in the greenhouse?
Oh, let's see. There's you. There's Caroline.
Yeah, Caroline.
And
too.
Ava too.
Yeah. What does Ava do that's helpful?
Oh, every Thursday I meet with her to discuss my concerns.
That's good.
And I also have Lindsay, because we do our DEI meetings every 2 Wednesdays.
Do you ever get to take a break in the afternoon to go hit the ski slopes? I saw in the movie that you like to ski, maybe.
Yeah, I go skiing on Saturdays.
Not during the work week, huh?
Yeah.
Very
Okay.
helpful.
Okay, I have a funny story, just a quick funny story about filming that scene where Johnny is skiing on the mountain. We had three people with cameras trying to keep up with Johnny. And do you remember, Johnny, you asked us, you said, are you going to come with me every Saturday? And we were like, no.
Yeah.
Wait, haven't you gotten a lot of medals for
Yeah.
skiing?
Yeah, from Special Olympics.
For being, aren't they for being fast?
Yeah, for speed.
Johnny's a very good skier. He grew up in Jackson, Wyoming, so he's an excellent
Okay.
skier.
Yeah.
Well, I could certainly learn a lot, and I think somebody who's also here in the audience who's had a bit of an aha. After watching the film, Andrew says, maybe it was Caroline, that something along the lines of IDD have traditionally been the 3 Fs: food, filth, and flowers, and we're changing that. Andrew just wanted to express how much that resonated with him, and that he's certainly going to use that moving forward. And I absolutely agree with Andrew there. Amelia asked a question, and Johnny, this is for you. What is your experience and maybe just feelings at Vertical Harvest as you worked your way up in the organization? So, you get promotions, people recognize you do good work,
Yeah.
and you
That
get
feels good
more
inside.
pay and responsibility.
It feels good.
Feels good, right?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
What responsibilities have you liked taking on?
Let's see. There's seating. Every Monday, every Monday, I'm now part of the seating team. Actually, I lead it.
Yeah, actually, you're the lead of that team, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
That is a pretty big deal. And Ryan, I want to ask you a question, and it comes from Amelia. In your perspective, are there enough inclusive, competitive, career opportunities in Weld County or northeastern Colorado for people with IDD?
I haven't really noticed that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some work we can do in that regard, right?
Right.
Okay.
I think one thing that I would love people to take away from the film, I mean, obviously Vertical Harvest they have a corporate culture of inclusion, like Arc Thrift, and, they're an amazing business. But I think also everybody at Vertical Harvest would agree, you don't need to start a multi-million-dollar hydroponic farm to have an inclusive corporate culture, to value diversity, to include disability as part of diversity. So I think that's one thing I kind of hear in the human resource community, like disability, unfortunately, as usual, was the last thing to the DEI table. So one thing that's happened in Jackson because of the visibility of Vertical Harvest, it being so new and different, and like this 3-story glass and steel building in the middle of a sort of Western touristy town, is other businesses notice the employment model. They have come to Vertical Harvest and they have asked, like, how can we tap into this workforce? So I think you also have a lot of motivated employers who don't necessarily know the first steps. And so promoting best practices, giving them resources, having other employers talk to them about their experiences, I think that is a really effective way to get other employers on board.
Cool. And Jen, maybe this is for you. Maybe it's for Johnny or Emily. Have the restaurants stuck with you post-production or after the film? That comes from Anonymous.
They definitely have had, I mean, you really see in the film how in the beginning it was such a steep learning curve of figuring out how to grow the plants well. So we've definitely had some periods where we have not been able to deliver some of the produce to the restaurants that we wanted to, and that never feels good as a farmer, but they have all stuck with us. They're still part of our culinary circle, and those are still the primary chefs that we seek out for feedback when we're thinking about, do we put a new product? Do we try growing a new product? Would you guys like this? Would this be good for your menu? And also our culinary circle, since the film, I'm not sure how well I'm going to explain this, but in the greenhouse, we used to have 2 full rooms of tomatoes, and we took one of those tomato rooms out and put more rack systems in to be able to grow more greens. So we have half the amount of tomatoes that we used to, which is sad because everybody loves tomatoes. And so we really prioritize being able to get those tomatoes to any of our culinary circle members or any of our, the restaurants that have really stuck with us. We like to be able to send those to them, and as for their continued support. So, I mean, COVID was hard, but in general, we've had great relationships with the local restaurants.
Awesome. Great. And I think this is a combo question, which is for Ryan and Johnny. Do you have career goals that you're working towards?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what do those look like for you, Ryan? I know that you're young and you have a whole career ahead of you, but what does that look like for you now? What sort of career do you want to be in?
I just continue to work for my plant business, and I love doing office work and community ambassador work.
Good. Well, you're certainly a good fit there. What about you, Johnny? What are your career goals?
Well, I always wanted to be, it's my destiny to be an artist.
Mm. I like that word, destiny. What kind of art?
Let's see. I might do,
Johnny always has art with him, so we can show you some examples.
yeah.
Wow,
Yeah. I was
that's
like,
pretty cool.
Johnny is very motivated. You have a lot of interest in the LGBTQ community and
Yeah.
social justice, and you create a lot of characters with multi-ethnic backgrounds and
Yeah.
different gender identities. And yeah, it's super cool.
I hope to make a TV program or a film about that. About said characters.
Great. So one person said, boy, you know, they see the biggest thing that they noticed in Vertical Harvest and ARC thrift stores is just the pride. I couldn't agree more. Emily or Johnny or Jen, how many people with IDD are employed at Vertical Harvest today?
Today, I think we are right around 50-50, a 50-50 split. And I believe that is,
I think
it's
you have
actually,
40, around 40.
yeah,
Yeah.
or 60-40.
Oh, no, I meant 50-50, but maybe 40 employees total. Does that
Yes,
sound
exactly.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
gonna say 42. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
40 total. Yeah.
great. And Lloyd, how many people with IDD, like percentage-wise? You have a ginormous workforce.
I think
Um,
percentage-wise, it's maybe 15 or 20%. So
Yeah,
I applaud Vertical Harvest. That's wonderful work. We continue to grow our percentage, and we'll continue to do that. We'll hire 20 employees with IDD annually going forward. But I'd like to have it a little closer to what Vertical Harvest is doing. I congratulate you.
cool. So clearly, we're all here on Zoom today. We've like figured out mute buttons and gallery views and all kinds of things. We've kind of had to make these things up, right? Or learn really quickly. Jen, how has the pandemic affected your ability to share film, which is such an intimate thing, right? When you're in a theater with groups, you just have this feeling. How has the pandemic affected your ability to share?
Well, I have to say we kind of lucked out when we did our festival run because it was pre-pandemic. So we did have that great opportunity where we, did have live audiences and did have reactions and live Q&As. And Johnny and Emily, we went on a tour of community colleges in Wyoming and a university. We have one university in Wyoming. Don't be jealous. Whoop. And yeah, and but they help support the community colleges, and community colleges are just critical to education and community networks. So that was really cool. The pandemic, we transitioned to virtual events like this, and I think most people have loved binging Netflix and other things like that. So watching our film and streaming it at their convenience has worked. Well, I wish I could settle down on a couch with everyone and eat popcorn next to them. I'm going to not do that creepy thing and just let them enjoy the film. I'm fine with that. But I do think we're still having a tremendous amount of impact by doing these virtual events and having these conversations and having people bring their local perspective to it. I mean, obviously we're telling a hyper local story about Jackson, Wyoming, but it's resonating with other communities across the nation. So it's exciting to learn what's going on in other communities. To support better outcomes in employment, but also just general community inclusion.
Cool. Now, Lloyd, and so ARC Thrift and Vertical Harvest, how has the pandemic affected your business or your operations?
Well, as a brick and mortar retailer, we had to really adjust. So we were shut down in April of 2020. We petitioned and we were granted an essential business designation. We focused a lot on relief during the early days of the pandemic. Since the pandemic struck, we've distributed 100 tons of food to people in need, tens and tens of thousands of pounds of supplies to all the rescue missions, shelters, senior centers, childcare centers. We've continued to fund the wonderful work of the ARCs across Colorado. And we've continued our employment of people with intellectual disabilities. Nobody was furloughed. We had to make adjustments in how we did our supplemental programs with our employees with disabilities. We did a lot of that virtually. So we had our education classes virtually. We had social events virtually, and we had our Civitans projects virtually. But the pandemic put a lot of challenges in front of us, and I'm proud to say that we met all those challenges. We are having a record year again this year, and I think that our employees with disabilities are a very big part of that, and we're very fortunate to have them. But there were a number of adjustments we had to make.
Yeah. Sounds like the first 15 months, Emily.
Yes, exactly. No, honestly, the pandemic was a whole nother challenge, unlike any I had experienced. What are your thoughts on how has work changed since the pandemic?
Well, I had to stay home from work for 8 weeks. So I went to my dad, and he wanted me to watch 4 chickens.
New skills. Actually, you got paid for that. That was a new job.
Yeah, he paid me. He paid me good.
What has changed since you've been back at work since the pandemic?
Yeah, well, I learned to manage my budget. Thus far, I've saved about $3,000.
Nice.
Wow.
And what about day-to-day work? How has that changed?
We had to wear masks in the building. Something we've never had to do before the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So as Johnny said, right when the pandemic hit, April of 2020, we never stopped operations, but we did have a 2-month period where we only had, instead of having 20 to 25 people in there on a daily basis, we only had about 5 people in there. And that was basically so that we could keep the plants alive, because we can't really halt operations without having huge losses. If people aren't in the building, all the plants die, because there's software in the building. It's called our Priva system, our climate control, that's constantly managing the temperatures and the irrigation, and those things go into alarm. We have to have somebody in the building every day in order to keep the building running. And so we basically went down, we called it to like a skeleton crew for those 2 months. And that was a really, really hard time. We basically just did that so that, it was basically like one person was in each compartment of the greenhouse, but so that there was basically no contact with other people during the day, to try and minimize any risk. And that's obviously very sad compared to our normal work environment. And also, in the beginning, we really didn't understand COVID-19 very well. And of course, we still have so much to learn, but, not understanding the virus very well too. I think we were particularly worried about, we were worried about all of our employees, but anybody that might have a pre-existing condition or be a high risk for some reason, or, you know, maybe not have as good of health insurance for some reason.
Or immunocompromised.
Yeah, or immunocompromised. And so we were really trying to limit contact for those first 2 months. And then in June, we started slowly bringing people back in kind of like one by one. And we had updated safety protocols, like Johnny was saying, masks all the time. And, you know, really, really intense, constant hand sanitizing and new gloves and that kind of thing. And then, yeah, I think a big change too for us was that we stopped doing public tours, which was really sad. And we had like a little storefront in the front of the greenhouse, and we closed that during COVID, and have not reopened it. We actually kind of reutilized that space, to have kind of a bigger employee break room, and more of a, and more greenhouse space. But those were two sad things that happened. We will bring back the public tours because we love doing those, and we really want the greenhouse to be a public-private partnership. And well, it is a public-private partnership, and we want to be a community resource. And you know, you meet, even though from my personal perspective as an operations person, the tours can be a little bit annoying because there's always like people around, and it creates more workflow concerns. And, you know, with the door opening, closing all the time, it creates a little bit more pest pressure in the building, which we have to monitor. But then the flip side is that you get people coming into the greenhouse and not really knowing where they are. They like look kind of confused, and then they go on the tour, and then they're just so excited about the project, and it's so inspiring. So yeah, it's changed a lot of things, but I think we've learned a lot, and it really also helped us. Sorry, I keep talking. I just keep thinking of, there's so many things. One thing that was really helpful was that it helped us really look at what we were growing and evaluate what was, we kind of evaluated what our best products were and how we could grow them more efficiently. And so it helped us with workflow, and it helped us kind of streamline our products, which I think we would have had to do anyways. But the pandemic and having more limited resources and more limited labor for a while really helped us think about how to be more efficient. And then when we brought more people back in, it's now allowing us to produce more than we ever have, which is cool. Been really cool.
Nice. You know, we have a question around, and really, this is open to anybody. I'm not going to give it to Lloyd or Emily or Johnny or Ryan, whoever feels, or Jennifer, whoever feels like they want to answer this question, please feel free to come in. You know, what is some advice you have for inclusive schools or businesses to be successful in their partnerships in the disability world?
I do
Not all at once.
I do a lot of work trying to educate other businesses and also in the schools on the value and contributions of inclusion. And in our case, with the financial success we've had, you know, we can demonstrate to employers that there really is a financial return from inclusion of all types. We're a very inclusive company. And the same thing in the schools. So I did a lot of work around my son's high school in terms of advocating for inclusion and mainstreaming and accommodations. And over time have actually gotten the principal to commit to a fully inclusive program, you know, in the coming years. I also have done PSAs with my son Kennedy on employment, and just most recently on school integration. So I think there's a lot we can do as the work that Jen does and the work that Emily does and Johnny and the ARCs in terms of really relaying the benefits and the values of inclusive practices everywhere, whether that's schools or employment or housing or other things that we all take for granted.
I have a question for you, Cristiano, about this. So you work mostly in policy. So how does policy drive the changes in, business and in just society in general? I mean, is there a chicken and an egg thing, so can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think the work that you guys do with the legislature is probably very important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I like the way that you frame that, Jen, in terms of chicken or egg. The ARC of Colorado will always get its direction from its members. And its members are parents, their families, their siblings, or people with IDD for the most part. And people like you who are on the line, people who work in this space, and they see that we need to move the needle. We have a particular point of view here at the ARC of Colorado around employment. We do not think it's okay that 80 to 85% of people with IDD are not employed. That is a shocking, staggering figure. And so when you think about that, and you think about the different policy levers, one, we were really happy last legislative session when we phased out or put an end to employers being able to pay people with intellectual developmental disabilities pennies on the dollar for fair work. But we couldn't just flip the switch and say, you can't do that anymore. That's the law of Colorado now. We had to bring in supports. And those supports are so critical. They're about job coaching, training, discovery. What does Ryan and Johnny want to do in their careers? Somebody has to pay for that. So we got money for that. There are disincentives to working when you have disability. So we had to address that and say, yes, you can do like Johnny and save $3,000 during the pandemic and not lose your benefits. So expanding Medicaid buy-in in the state for individuals who do want to work more. And several other components. I think a big piece though, which is why I'm just so thrilled to be here, starts with perception. It starts with stigma and ending discrimination. And a big piece of that is perception. And when we have films like Hearts of Glass, when we have films like Lloyd is going to be debuting at the Denver Film Festival, it changes people's hearts and it opens doors, right? And that's what I wake up to do every day in the public policy space. I couldn't do it without our members. I couldn't do it without leaders like you all who are here today. The more we can lift up successful examples like ARC Thrift, like Vertical Harvest, like the ARC of Weld County, who puts their money where their mouth is and hires individuals with IDD, the better off we're going to be. So great question. As you can see, I get pretty passionate about this, and I could probably talk all night about this. But I also know that people need to make dinner and maybe leave the office if you are in the office. So I just want to thank everybody for spending the time here today. The ARC of Colorado is always open to questions if people have them about public policy, about any of this space. I know that the ARC of Weld County, their phone lines, their email, that is wide open to you during the pandemic. But consider that door open if you have questions, particularly those of you that are in Northeast Colorado. reach out to the Arc of Weld. They're going to be some of your best navigators, some of your best friends. You know, I am going to need to make my Jackson trip much sooner on the itinerary than I would have thought, because I leave this conversation inspired. And I can't even imagine being in the space and seeing Johnny and Emily in person, and all of the great work in the colleagues. So thank you, Jennifer, for this kernel of inspiration, and thank you all for joining.
Can I take one little video of us all
Absolutely.
looking awesome? Okay. All right. Are you prepared to look awesome on and just wave and give me some smiles and move, because it's video. It's video, man. We got to move. All right. Okay. I hope all of you are okay with social media, because it's going out there. All right. This has been an honor and a delight. Thank you guys so much, the Arc of Weld County and the Arc of Colorado, for putting this together.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
Thanks for having us,
you.
Wes.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Yeah.